5,000 years ago, there were no skyscrapers. No highways. No machines. For most people, the entire world was a collection of small villages surrounded by fields, rivers, wilderness, and an enormous unknown horizon. But in the hot, dusty lands of ancient Mesopotamia, something extraordinary was happening. Between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, thousands of people were gathering in one place. Farmers came carrying baskets of barley. Fishermen arrived from settlements along the river. Herders drove sheep and goats through clouds of dust. Merchants brought timber, stone, metals, pottery, and strange goods from lands many days away. And rising above them all were enormous structures made from millions of sun-dried mud bricks. This was no longer a village. It was becoming a city. And cities would change humanity forever. But building one was not easy. The land of southern Mesopotamia could be brutally unforgiving. The sun burned the open plains. Rainfall was scarce. And yet, beside the rivers, the soil could become incredibly fertile. Ancient farmers discovered that if they could control the water, they could transform dry earth into productive farmland. So people began digging. With simple tools and human hands, they carved canals through the landscape. Water flowed away from the river and into fields that had once been dry. Barley grew. Dates ripened on palm trees. Sheep grazed near settlements. Harvests became larger. And for the first time, communities could produce enough food to support large numbers of people who were not farmers. That changed everything. Some people became builders. Others became potters. Some worked with copper. Some made cloth. Others became merchants, priests, soldiers, administrators, and scribes. Human society was becoming more complicated. And as thousands of people crowded together, another problem appeared. Someone had to organize it all. Who owned this field? How much grain had been harvested? Who had delivered livestock to the temple? Who owed grain? Who had already paid? Human memory was no longer enough. So administrators began pressing marks into wet clay. At first, the marks represented simple goods and numbers. A quantity of barley. A group of sheep. A delivery of grain. But gradually, those marks became more sophisticated. Symbols began representing words, names, actions, and ideas. The clay tablet had become something revolutionary. Writing ****. For the first time, a person's words could survive after their voice disappeared. But the growing city needed more than records. It needed protection. Mud brick walls rose around settlements. Gates controlled who entered. Guards watched roads and waterways. Beyond those walls were rival cities competing for farmland, trade routes, livestock, and, most importantly, water. The canals that brought life could also become a source of conflict. Control the water, and you could feed thousands. Lose it, and crops could disappear. So rulers gained power. Workers strengthened walls. Soldiers carried spears. Temples grew larger. And at the center of the city, monumental buildings climbed toward the sky. Imagine seeing such a place for the first time. A farmer arriving from a tiny village would walk through a massive gateway and enter streets filled with more people than he had ever seen. Donkeys carried heavy loads. Merchants shouted beside crowded stalls. Craftsmen hammered metal. Potters shaped wet clay. Smoke rose from ovens. Children ran between mud brick houses. Animals crowded narrow streets. Boats unloaded goods beside canals. And towering over everything stood the city's sacred buildings. This was a completely new human experience. Among the greatest of these early urban centers was Uruk, in what is now Iraq. At its height during the 4th millennium BCE, Uruk grew to a scale almost unimaginable compared with the villages that had existed before it. Tens of thousands of people may have lived within and around this enormous settlement. But the greatest invention of the city wasn't a wall. It wasn't a temple. And it wasn't even writing. It was something less visible. Cooperation. Thousands of strangers were learning how to live together. They depended on farmers they had never met. They bought objects made by craftsmen they didn't know. They followed rules created by institutions larger than any single family. They traded with people living beyond the horizon. Human beings had created something that could survive beyond one person, one family, or even one generation. A civilization. The people walking those ancient streets could never have known what would follow. They could not imagine Rome. They could not imagine London, Tokyo, New York, or the enormous cities of the modern world. But every crowded avenue, marketplace, apartment building, government office, warehouse, written contract, and city wall has an ancient ancestor. 5,000 years ago, beside the rivers of Mesopotamia, humanity crossed a threshold. The village had become the city. The spoken word was becoming the written record. The farmer had been joined by the merchant, the builder, the soldier, the administrator, and the scribe. And from those streets of mud, brick and dust emerged an idea that would spread across the world. Civilization had found a home. Enjoying the story so far? If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. Your support really encourages me to keep researching, creating, and bringing more incredible stories from the ancient world to life. And let me know in the comments, which ancient civilization should we explore next?